Hi, my name is Sabrina Nelson, and I serve as the director for the Center for Student Success. Before we jump in to talk about burnout, we're going to do a moment of deep breathing to help us center and ground ourselves as well. So go ahead and get comfortable. If you're comfortable to do so and able to do so, go ahead and close your eyes or stare off into the distance. And we're going to engage in box breathing. So go ahead and take in a deep breath for 4 counts. So in, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Again, breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold. Thank you. It only feels fitting to go ahead and do this deep breathing before we jump in as we're talking about burnout. So what is burnout? Burnout is a negative state of emotional, mental, and physical exhaustion that is caused by excessive stress and an inability to cope. This is most affiliated and triggered in prolonged periods of stress. And we often see this in the workplace, in academic settings, and sometimes in caregiving settings as well. There are a handful of different components to burnout. A few of the components are emotional exhaustion. This is the fatigue that comes from caring for too long. Cynicism, inefficacy, an experience of lack of motivation, enjoyment, and maybe a loss of interest, and a decreased sense of accomplishment, as if nothing that you do makes a difference, depersonalization, and a loss of sense of self. We're going to dive in a little bit deeper into this emotional exhaustion and depersonalization. So sometimes burnout occurs when we get stuck in emotions, and research has shown us that emotional exhaustion is most strongly linked to negative impacts on our health, our relationships, and work. So it's important to acknowledge that emotions have a beginning, middle, and end. We could use the metaphor of emotions needing to travel through a tunnel. So entering the tunnel, moving through the tunnel, and exiting on the other end of the tunnel. Many of us are taught in our society that if we remove the stressor, then we go ahead and remove the stress and the emotions that are affiliated with stress. However, recent research has shown that that is not, in fact, the reality. We really do need to learn how to ride emotions all the way through the tunnel. This looks different for different people. Maybe you need to cry. Maybe you need to get really physically active. Perhaps it's writing or reading poetry. Maybe it's writing or listening to music, deep breathing. There are many different ways to go about this. So do whatever you need to do to help yourself experience those emotions and ride them all the way through the tunnel. Depersonalization is another component of burnout. This is a persistent feeling of detachment from oneself because you may have pushed yourself to the limit physically, mentally, and/or emotionally. This is often characterized by a depletion of empathy, caring, and compassion, and you may experience a loss of sense of self. Winona State University has studied burnout, and they have identified 5 different stages of burnout. Honeymoon is the first stage. Here you're really jiving with your work or your course load, really excited and optimistic about what you're engaging in. Stage 2 is the onset of stress. Here we start to notice that there may be tougher days or bad days in the mix. You start to get tired. You may start to notice irritability, an inability to focus, and maybe perhaps higher blood pressure, to name a few. Then we move on into the third stage. This is chronic stress. This is marked by an increased level of stress, anger, apathy, cynicism, and resentfulness. Here, you might even start to experience and start to think of escaping the situation, or escapist behaviors might start to be demonstrated. Then we move into the fourth stage, known as burnout. Here, it becomes increasingly difficult to cope, and the symptoms, I intentionally use quotes because burnout is not currently a diagnosable reality, may become critical. This includes behavior changes, chronic headaches. You may actually start to desire to drop out of school or the job. You might start to feel empty inside and starting to doubt yourself, perhaps even isolating. Then we move on into the fifth stage, habitual burnout. And this is where the symptoms or experiences of burnout are really embedded in your existence and are really chronic. Here, you might even start to tip into depression. If that's the case, highly suggest that you seek mental and emotional support and our mental health resources that are available. Something that's really neat with this 5-stage process is that you can move back into the lower stages. And folks who have developed proper coping mechanisms and strategies in that first stage, the honeymoon stage, may never move on into higher stages. I don't know about you, but that's really attractive and something that I'm striving towards as well. This might be a good opportunity to pause the presentation and review what's on here and review the different stages. It's just a good point of self-awareness to think about where you might have been previously or currently are in regards to burnout. Some of those coping strategies and things that help folks stay in that first stage or lower levels of burnout include some lifestyle changes. So a few recommendations are to go to sleep a bit earlier. Sleep really helps your body and your mind heal. It helps with remembering information that you're taking in the academic settings, and is just really rejuvenating. Another recommendation is to implement or recommit to a self-care routine. You know yourself best. You know which dimensions of wellness may be a bit off. So go ahead and start to lean into those different dimensions of wellness that are kind of tugging on you a little bit more so. Find time for silence. This could include journaling, meditation, walking alone, or simply sitting for a few moments in silence. That breathing exercise of box breathing is an example of a really quick way to really center yourself and be calm or become calm and quiet in a moment as well. Another recommendation is to set boundaries. You may need to set realistic expectations with folks who are in your life, and this does involve saying no from time to time as well. And then practice time management strategies. We'll have an additional video available to you that shares different methods of time management skills, both for the short-term and long-term time management. So go ahead and check that out if that's something that's of interest. And then find ways to celebrate your accomplishments. That concept of depersonalization can really run you ragged. So find ways to celebrate the small and big moments. This can be anything from completing a paper to proposing your dissertation or defending your dissertation, identifying your thesis topic. Make sure to celebrate those personal moments, birthdays, anniversaries, different holidays as well. Or you just make sure to celebrate that you notice that you're starting to make some of those lifestyle changes as well. Acknowledging the milestones, successes, and accomplishments along the way really helps prevent that depersonalization aspect of burnout. So your major takeaways, try to go to sleep earlier, build in time for self-care and silence, make sure to ride those emotions all the way through the tunnel, breathe, get physical, establish routines when you're able to do so, and make sure to celebrate those successes along the way. Thanks, and have a good one.